Have you ever been so caught up in something important that you forget about the person who was always by your side? That's exactly what happened to Alex, a successful CEO who became so focused on his business empire that he overlooked his wife, Sophia, for years. Their love had once been strong, filled with long conversations and special moments. However, as Alex's company grew, so did the distance between them. For 7 years, Alex spent all his time in meetings, making deals, and building his legacy. His business was his top priority, and it seemed like everything else, including his marriage, came second. As a result, Sophia felt neglected. The woman who once had his full attention now spent her days trying to fill the emptiness in her heart. She filled her time with friends and hobbies, but nothing could truly replace the love and affection she once received from Alex. Outwardly, they were the perfect couple, admired by everyone around them. They attended social events, put on smiles, and were the envy of many. But behind closed doors, Sophia's loneliness grew. She missed the man who used to surprise her with small acts of love, the man who saw her as more than just a wife. Over time, she became invisible to him, lost in the shadow of his business. Alex, on the other hand, didn't realize the depth of the distance that had formed between them. To him, everything seemed fine. He was busy, yes, but he was also providing for their future. In his mind, his success was a sign of his love for Sophia. After all, wasn't he working so hard to secure their life together? But what he didn't see was how his actions, or lack thereof, were hurting her. This was when Luke came into the picture. Luke was different. He noticed Sophia in ways that Alex hadn't in years. They started talking, sharing small moments, and slowly a friendship formed between them. It was innocent at first, just friendly conversation, but for Sophia it was something more. It was a chance to feel seen again, to feel important in someone's eyes. Luke's kindness and attention began to fill the gaps that Alex's absence had created. One afternoon, during a public event, Luke did something that would change everything. Without warning, he sent Sophia a bouquet of flowers, delivered right, in front of Alex. It was a simple gesture, but it was a powerful one. A bouquet of flowers, something so small, yet it carried a message of attention, care, and affection, things Alex had stopped giving her long ago. When Alex saw the flowers, his heart skipped a beat. His mind raced and jealousy surged through him like a storm. He had always been the one in control, the one who was admired. But in that moment, he realized how much he had taken Sophia for granted. The flowers were a wake-up call. They were a clear sign that another man could now give her something he hadn't in years: his attention, his affection, and his care. Alex's feelings of jealousy and anger were not just about the flowers. They were about everything he had neglected in his life. For the first time, he saw that the woman he had ignored for so long could slip away. He realized that no amount of business success could make up for the emptiness in his marriage. The power in their relationship had shifted without him even noticing. Sophia had been invisible to Alex for so long, but now she had become visible to someone else. The simple gesture of a bouquet of flowers had ignited a fire in Alex's heart, one that had been dimmed for far too long. At that moment, he understood what was at stake. The life he had built could crumble if he didn't act fast. It was a lesson that many people never learn. Sometimes, the things we take for granted are the very things that can slip away without us even realizing it. Alex had been so focused on building his business that he had lost sight of the most important thing in his life: his wife. Now, as he watched Sophia with Luke, Alex was faced with a choice: continue down the path of neglect or fight for the love he had almost lost. The decision was in his hands, but it would take more than just a simple apology. It would take time, effort, and a complete shift in how he viewed his priorities. What Alex didn't know was that Sophia had already made up her mind. She had been patient for so long, waiting for him to notice her, to love her the way she needed to be loved. She was tired of being ignored, of feeling like she was invisible. But was it too late for Alex to change? Could he win her back after everything he had taken for granted? The simple bouquet of flowers had started a chain of events that neither Alex nor Sophia could ignore. It was the turning point in their marriage, and it would take more than just words to repair the cracks that had formed over the years. As Alex reflected on everything that had happened, he knew one thing for sure. He had to do more than just apologize. He had to prove to Sophia that he was ready to give her the attention and love she deserved. It was no longer about his business empire. It was about her and their future together. And so, the story of Alex, Sophia, and Luke continued, with each of them facing their own truths and deciding what mattered most in their lives. The question now was, would Alex's jealousy drive him to make the right choices, or would he lose everything he had taken for granted? Only time will tell. Alex's journey to success was nothing short of remarkable. From the very beginning, he knew that achieving his dreams would require immense dedication and hard work. He spent countless hours working late into the night, attending meetings, and making decisions that would shape the future of his company. Every moment was focused on building his empire. His ambition was his driving force, and nothing could stand in his way. He sacrificed his personal time, his hobbies, and even moments with his family to ensure his business grew. And it did, rapidly. His company became a household name, and people admired him for his success. He was seen as a leader, a visionary, someone who had it all. But success, as Alex soon realized, came at a price. The more time he spent building his empire, the less time he had for the people who truly mattered to him. His wife, Sophia, once his closest companion, became a distant figure in his life. Alex didn't intentionally neglect her, but his focus was always on work. He thought that by building a strong business, he was securing their future. However, what he didn't realize was that, in the process, he was slowly eroding the foundation of their marriage. Sophia, on the other hand, watched as her husband became more consumed with his work. She felt the distance growing between them, and it hurt. At first, she tried to be understanding. She knew how important Alex's business was to him, and she supported him in every way she could. But as the months turned into years, she began to feel neglected. She missed the days when Alex would surprise her with small acts of love, or when they would spend time together, laughing and talking. Those moments seemed like a distant memory. Instead, she was left alone, trying to fill the emptiness in her heart. Sophia found herself turning to different activities to cope with her loneliness. She took up hobbies, joined social groups, and spent more time with friends. She even went on vacations with family, but it was never the same. No matter how much she tried to fill the void, nothing could replace the love and affection that Alex had once given her. She missed him, but more than that, she missed the connection they once had. She felt as though she was invisible to him, and that realization was heartbreaking. Despite her growing sadness, Sophia didn't express her feelings to Alex. She didn't want to add to his stress or make him feel guilty. She quietly accepted the situation, hoping that one day things would change. She convinced herself that Alex was just busy with work and that everything would get better once his business settled. But deep down, she knew the truth. Their marriage was no longer what it used to be. The connection they had once shared was fading away, and she was powerless to stop it. Outwardly, everything seemed perfect. They were the ideal power couple, successful, glamorous, and admired by everyone around them. People envied their life, their wealth, and their status. But behind closed doors, the reality was much different. The couple that once shared intimate conversations and laughter now found themselves sitting in silence more often than not. Alex was always busy, and Sophia felt more alone than ever. The love they once had seemed to slip away with each passing day, and neither of them knew how to fix it. As Alex's empire grew, so did the distance between them. The more time Alex spent working on his business, the less he paid attention to his wife. He was always consumed by meetings, deadlines, and the pressure to keep the company growing. Sophia's needs, her desire for affection, attention, and love, became secondary. It wasn't that Alex didn't love her, it was simply that his focus had shifted entirely to his work. He didn't realize the toll his absence was taking on her emotionally. She wasn't just his wife. She was the person who had stood by him through every struggle, every challenge, and every victory. Yet she felt as though she was being left behind, forgotten in the shadow of his success. Sophia's loneliness grew each day. She had always been a strong, independent woman, but the neglect from the man she loved hurt more than she could put into words. She tried to fill the gap with other things, but nothing gave her the same sense of warmth and security that Alex's love once did. She missed his presence, his voice, his touch. She missed the small moments that made their relationship special. But with each passing year, those moments seemed more like a distant memory. Alex, on the other hand, didn't see the change in his marriage. He was so absorbed in his work that he failed to notice how much things had shifted. He thought everything was fine. After all, he was providing for their future, wasn't he? He believed that success in his career was the best way to show his love for Sophia. But he couldn't have been more wrong. His absence, his lack of attention, and his constant focus on business were causing a rift that he didn't even recognize. He took Sophia's presence for granted, assuming she would always be there, waiting for him. The tension between them began to build silently. They didn't argue much, but there was a noticeable strain in their interactions. They went through the motions of married life, but there was no real connection anymore. They attended social events, smiled for the cameras, and maintained the image of a happy couple. But inside, Sophia felt the weight of their crumbling marriage. She wanted to talk to Alex about how she felt, but she didn't know how. She feared that it would only push him further away. So she kept her feelings bottled up, pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. Sophia's growing loneliness was a silent cry for help, but Alex didn't hear it. He was too focused on his business, too busy with his own world to see what was happening in theirs. It wasn't until a simple gesture from someone else that Alex would realize just how much he had lost. The distance that had slowly built between them was about to be exposed in a way he could never have anticipated. The cracks in their marriage were becoming more visible, and soon Alex would have to face the reality of what he had been ignoring for years. The price of his success was his marriage, and he was about to learn that no amount of business success could make up for the love and connection he had neglected. The question now was, would it be too late to fix what he had broken, or would he lose Sophia forever? As the years passed and the gap between Alex and Sophia widened, Sophia began to feel a deep, emotional void. Her life with Alex had once been filled with love and shared dreams, but now those dreams felt like they belonged to someone else, someone who had forgotten about her. The man who had once been her closest friend, confidant, and partner now seemed like a stranger. She couldn't shake the loneliness, the feeling that she was living in a marriage that had lost its warmth and connection. Desperate for something to fill the emptiness she felt inside, Sophia decided to try new things. She took up several hobbies, hoping that they would distract her from the growing pain she felt every day. She started painting, something she had always wanted to do, but had never found time for. She enrolled in a cooking class and learned how to make dishes from different parts of the world. The act of cooking became therapeutic for her, a way to focus her mind on something other than the ache of her heart. But no matter how many new things she tried, nothing seemed to satisfy the deep loneliness that clung to her. Sophia also found herself seeking out new social circles. She started attending local meetups and gatherings, hoping to fill the gap left by Alex's absence. She met new people and made new friends, and for a while it seemed to help. She enjoyed their company, the laughter, and the shared experiences. But even in these new friendships, there was something missing. The connection she longed for wasn't there. No matter how much she surrounded herself with others, the void that Alex had left remained unfilled. Sophia wasn't looking for someone else. She wasn't searching for a way to replace Alex. Rather, she was hoping to find a sense of belonging that had been lost over the years. She wanted to feel seen and valued, and she hoped that through her hobbies and social activities she might find some small piece of the happiness she had once known with Alex. But the more she tried to distract herself, the more she realized that her heart was still longing for the one person who could truly make her feel whole: Alex. But despite her efforts to move forward, the emptiness lingered. The laughter with friends, the new skills she had acquired, and the time spent in various activities couldn't heal the hurt she felt deep down. The emotional void left by Alex's neglect was something no new hobby, no matter how fulfilling, could ever fill. She could paint beautiful pictures, prepare delicious meals, and enjoy time with friends, but it wasn't the same. There was still something missing, a piece of her heart that Alex had once filled with his love, and now that piece was empty. It was in the midst of this loneliness, during one of her many days of quiet reflection, that a new figure entered Sophia's life. He wasn't someone she had been seeking out, nor was he someone who could fill the hole Alex had left. But he did offer her something that she hadn't felt in a long time: attention. Luke was different from the men she had known before. He wasn't trying to replace Alex. He wasn't even trying to offer her anything romantic. Instead, Luke was someone who truly noticed her. He saw her in a way that Alex hadn't in years. Luke and Sophia met through a mutual friend at one of the social gatherings she had started attending. At first, their conversations were casual. They spoke about hobbies, mutual interests, and even exchanged a few jokes. It wasn't anything serious, but it felt different from the interactions she had with others. Luke listened to her in a way that made her feel heard. He made her feel valued, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. Over the next few weeks, Sophia and Luke's friendship grew. They began talking more often, sharing stories about their lives, their dreams, and their struggles. With Luke, Sophia didn't feel the constant reminder of her unfulfilled marriage. She felt like herself again, someone who could talk freely and openly without being judged. She wasn't trying to fill the void Alex had left. She was simply enjoying the connection with someone who saw her for who she truly was. In many ways, Luke's presence reminded Sophia of the early days with Alex, when everything felt fresh and exciting. Their conversations were light-hearted, but there was a depth to them that she had been missing. It wasn't about love or romance. It was about being noticed, being understood, and feeling like she mattered to someone. For the first time in years, Sophia felt like she was more than just a wife, more than just the woman waiting for her husband to come home from work. She was someone in her own right. Despite the emotional warmth that Luke brought into her life, Sophia remained committed to her marriage. She wasn't seeking out an affair or trying to replace Alex. Instead, she was looking for something she had long been denied: attention, understanding, and companionship. Luke, with his kindness and genuine interest, was offering her something Alex had forgotten to provide for far too long. But no matter how much she enjoyed Luke's company, she couldn't ignore the fact that her heart still ached for Alex. She still loved him, even though he had hurt her. She still hoped that one day he would wake up and realize what he had been neglecting, but that hope was starting to fade with each passing day. Her efforts to find fulfillment outside of their marriage helped, but they didn't solve the problem. The problem was not that Sophia was unhappy with herself or her life. It was that her marriage had become a hollow shell of what it once was. Sophia began to wonder if Alex would ever change, if he would ever stop focusing so much on his business and see the woman he had taken for granted. She had waited for years for him to notice her, and every year that passed without any sign of change made her feel more and more invisible. In the meantime, she continued to find solace in her hobbies, her friends, and the new connection she had with Luke. But she knew deep down that none of these things could replace the love and affection that Alex had once shown her. She wasn't looking for someone else. She wasn't hoping for a new romance. She simply wanted to be seen, to be loved, and to feel valued by the man she had given her heart to all those years ago. Yet, with every day that passed, she felt that dream slipping further and further away. Sophia never expected that someone new would come into her life, especially not in the way that Luke did. She had long accepted her solitude, focusing on hobbies and friendships, trying to fill the space Alex had left in her heart. But one afternoon, at a casual gathering, a man named Luke caught her attention. He wasn't the most striking person in the room, nor was he the center of attention. He was quiet, observant, and, most importantly, he took notice of her. Luke wasn't like the others in the room who barely seemed to care about the conversations around them. He was engaged, listening intently to what people had to say, and when his eyes landed on Sophia, something shifted. He seemed genuinely interested in her, not just in a polite way, but with the curiosity of someone who was eager to know who she really was. He asked her questions that weren't superficial. He didn't just ask about her job or what she was doing with her life. He asked about her passions, her dreams, and the things that made her smile. At that moment, Sophia realized something she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt seen. It wasn't something she had been actively searching for, but it was something she desperately needed. Luke made her feel like she was more than just a wife, more than just someone who existed in the background of someone else's life. For the first time in years, she felt like someone noticed her in a way that Alex had forgotten how to. Their first conversation was casual, small talk about shared interests and mutual acquaintances, but it felt different from the typical conversations she had. Luke listened intently, smiled often, and seemed to understand her in a way that felt effortless. Unlike the conversations she had with Alex, there was no need to ask for attention. Luke gave it freely. He wasn't distracted by his phone or his work or his ambitions. He was there, in the moment, talking to her like she mattered. Over the next few weeks, their interactions grew more frequent. Luke would show up at social gatherings and strike up conversations with Sophia. At first, it was just friendly banter. They shared stories, exchanged opinions, and laughed together. But Sophia found herself looking forward to their talks. Luke's presence was comforting. He made her feel like a person again, not just someone's neglected wife. The simple, genuine way he treated her stood in stark contrast to the indifference she had become accustomed to from Alex. As time passed, Luke began to do small things that made Sophia feel special. He would bring her favorite snacks when they met up or share books he thought she might enjoy. He made little gestures that showed he was paying attention and that he cared. These small acts of kindness were more than just thoughtful. They were reminders to Sophia that there were still people who saw her for who she was, not for what she represented as Alex's wife, or for the status she held as part of a power couple. As much as Sophia tried to keep their interactions casual, she could feel the connection between them deepening. Luke was kind, attentive, and genuinely interested in her well-being. The attention he gave her was exactly what she had been missing, and it was starting to fill a void that had only grown larger in the years she had spent waiting for Alex to notice her. She wasn't looking for romance, but the way Luke treated her made her question the choices she had made in her marriage. With each passing day, Luke's affection for Sophia seemed to grow. It wasn't in a dramatic, overt way. He didn't shower her with gifts or make grand romantic gestures. Instead, He made her feel appreciated, which was something that had been missing from her life for a long time. His interest in her didn't feel forced or calculated. It felt natural and effortless, like they had known each other for much longer than they really had. He didn't need to make her feel special because it was already happening through his actions. Luke's growing affection was not just a reflection of his attraction to Sophia, but also a reflection of how deeply he valued her as a person. He didn't try to fill a gap in her life because he saw her as someone who was already whole. Instead, he brought out the best in her. He didn't need to be the one to fix things, to save her from her loneliness. He simply wanted to be part of her life, and that was more than enough. Sophia began to notice the difference in how Luke made her feel compared to Alex. Luke's presence didn't make her feel like she had to be someone else to be valued. With Alex, she had often felt like she was living in the shadows, constantly trying to get his attention, trying to remind him of the woman he had once married. However, with Luke, she felt accepted just as she was. She didn't have to beg for his love or affection. He simply offered it, and that was something she had longed for from Alex but had never received. The connection between Sophia and Luke wasn't just about the time they spent together or the conversations they had. It was about the emotional space they shared. Luke made her feel like her emotions were valid, like she wasn't just a passive observer in her own life. He allowed her to express herself without fear of judgment or dismissal, and that alone made him stand out from the other people in her life. However, as the bond between Sophia and Luke continued to grow, she began to wrestle with her own feelings. She wasn't looking to betray Alex, but she also couldn't ignore how much Luke made her feel alive again. She began to wonder if it was possible to have a meaningful connection with someone else without it, meaning that she was replacing her love for Alex. She wasn't sure if she was ready to let go of her marriage, but she knew that she couldn't continue to ignore how she was feeling. The more time she spent with Luke, the more she realized that the emptiness inside her wasn't something she could ignore forever. The friendship between Luke and Sophia had grown into something more. It wasn't a romantic relationship, at least not yet, but there was something undeniably deeper between them. They had formed a bond based on mutual respect, understanding, and care. Sophia had never expected it to develop into something more, but she was beginning to realize that maybe the attention she had longed for from Alex was available from someone else. In Luke's eyes, Sophia wasn't just a wife, a part of a couple. She was a person. She was someone worth paying attention to, worth noticing. And for the first time in years, Sophia felt like she was truly being seen again. The evening was supposed to be another ordinary event in the world of high-powered business. It was a gala, one of those glitzy gatherings where the rich and influential come together to celebrate success. Alex and Sophia had attended these events countless times, and although they often put on a show for the cameras and guests, there was always a certain coldness between them. Alex was preoccupied with work, his mind drifting to meetings and negotiations, while Sophia remained at his side, trying to look engaged despite the growing distance between them. But this event was different. For the first time in a long while, something unexpected happened, something that would change everything. As the evening progressed, the usual conversations about business deals and industry trends filled the air. Guests sipped champagne and mingled while Alex stayed in his usual spot, closely monitoring the room, scanning for opportunities and threats. He didn't notice at first when Luke entered the room, but then, just as the night was beginning to feel like any other, something caught his attention. Luke had walked in carrying a bouquet of flowers. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a simple arrangement of white lilies and roses, but the moment Alex saw him approaching Sophia, his heart dropped. Luke was smiling at her, as if they were old friends. No, more than that. As he handed her the bouquet, there was a look of genuine affection on his face. Sophia, to her credit, smiled in return. She wasn't expecting this, and neither was Alex. It wasn't the kind of thing that happened in their world. Flowers in public? That wasn't Alex's style. He had always been focused on business and the empire he was building, but right now, in front of him, there was something that Alex had never fully realized he was missing. Someone else had noticed his wife. It was just a bouquet. Simple, innocent. But for Alex, it was a wake-up call. At first, he didn't know how to react. His anger boiled up slowly, a simmering frustration that turned into confusion. His mind raced. How could this be happening? He had always been the one who was admired. He had always been the one who commanded attention. And now, here was this man, this stranger, sending his wife flowers in public as though he had the right to do so. How could Luke be so bold? How could he just waltz into their world and do something Alex had never done? Alex's confusion quickly turned into a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Jealousy. It was a sharp, unexpected emotion that coursed through him like fire. He had never been the jealous type. He had never needed to be. But now, as he watched Sophia accept the bouquet with a soft smile, Alex felt something he couldn't ignore, something he had long neglected. The feeling that maybe he wasn't the only man who mattered in her life anymore. For the first time in a long time, Alex realized that Sophia, the woman he had taken for granted, could slip away from him. She wasn't just standing by his side anymore because of obligation. No, she had options now. She had someone who was paying attention to her, someone who made her feel special in ways he had long forgotten how to. The realization hit him hard. The walls he had built around his business empire were suddenly irrelevant. The skyscrapers he had constructed, the deals he had secured, the money he had earned, none of it mattered when compared to the simple gesture of a bouquet of flowers. Alex had been so focused on building his success that he hadn't seen the woman standing beside him slowly slipping away. As the flowers exchanged hands, Alex's mind started to race. He watched as Sophia thanked Luke, a genuine smile on her face. She looked happy, truly happy, not just playing the part of the dutiful wife. And that moment, that simple exchange, changed everything for Alex. His immediate reaction was one of pure anger. It wasn't just anger at Luke for sending the flowers. It wasn't even about the flowers themselves. It was the realization that he had neglected his wife for years, and now someone else had stepped in. Someone else was doing what he should have been doing all along. He had failed, and it hurt more than he could admit. He could feel the jealousy creeping in, the tight knot of panic in his chest. Was he losing her? Sophia had always been there for him, waiting patiently as he climbed the ladder of success. But while he was scaling that ladder, she was slowly slipping through his fingers. And now, with this gesture from Luke, it felt like Alex had finally seen the truth. He wasn't the only one who could love her. He wasn't the only one who could make her feel special. The jealousy began to grow, fueled by his own insecurities. He hadn't just lost sight of his wife, he had lost sight of himself. What had he become? A man so consumed by ambition and success that he forgot about the woman who had stood by him through it all? The woman who had once been his greatest priority. Now she was someone else's muse, someone else's focus. As the event continued, Alex could no longer enjoy the conversations around him. His mind kept drifting back to the image of Luke handing Sophia the flowers. He watched the way she smiled and looked at him, and it gnawed at him. He felt something stir inside him, something that was equal parts anger, confusion, and regret. He had no right to feel this way, but he couldn't help it. He had taken her for granted, and now he feared. It was too late to fix things. The shift in their relationship was palpable. At that moment, the power dynamics of their marriage shifted. Alex had always thought of himself as the man in control, the one who could make things happen. But now, standing there in the midst of a crowded room, he realized that the woman he had neglected for so long might not be his anymore. Sophia wasn't the same woman she had been 7 years ago. She had grown stronger and more independent, and now someone else had noticed. She didn't need him the way she once did. She had the power to choose, and that terrified Alex more than anything else. The bouquet of flowers, a simple and innocent gesture, shattered Alex's world. What had been a long time coming, a slow drift between them, suddenly felt like an avalanche. The truth was undeniable. Alex had been too late. He had ignored her for too long, and now he was facing the consequences. Sophia was no longer the woman who waited quietly for her husband to notice her. She had learned to live without him, to fill the emptiness he had created. And now, she was finally seeing the world through different eyes. The realization hit Alex hard. He was no longer the center of her world. That place was now occupied by someone else, Alex's jealous rage. The moment the gala ended, Alex couldn't shake off the burning feeling inside him. His mind raced, and his heart pounded as he replayed the scene over and over in his head. The image of Luke handing Sophia the flowers, her genuine smile as she accepted them. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He had been so busy with his empire, so absorbed in his own success, that he hadn't even noticed the emotional gap that had grown between him and his wife. And now, someone else had stepped in, filling that void in ways Alex had long neglected. The drive home was tense. Sophia sat beside him in silence, her own mind racing. She knew that Alex had seen everything. She had felt the change in him, the shift in the atmosphere. But she didn't say a word. She had learned long ago that Alex's silence often meant he was bottling something up, something dangerous. As soon as they arrived at their penthouse, Alex couldn't hold it in any longer. He stormed into the living room, his fists clenched at his sides, his jaw set in anger. He turned to Sophia, his eyes blazing with jealousy and frustration. "Why?" he snapped, his voice harsh. "Why did you let him do that? Why did you let him send you flowers in front of everyone? What's going on between you two?" Sophia flinched at the intensity of his outburst, but she didn't respond immediately. She could feel the weight of his jealousy, and it stung. She had always known that Alex's ambition would eventually cause a rift between them, but she had never imagined it would lead to this kind of reaction. For the first time in years, Alex felt the sting of vulnerability, she thought quietly to herself. She had seen this side of him before. This was the man who had once been so sure of himself, so confident in his control over their lives. But now, with the flowers in her hand and Luke's smile still fresh in her mind, Alex was no longer the untouchable man he once was. He was a man who had lost control, and the jealousy he felt was his way of trying to regain it. Sophia took a deep breath and finally spoke. "Alex, I didn't ask him to send me flowers. It was just a gesture, nothing more," she said, her voice calm but firm. She had learned over the years that calmness was often the best way to deal with Alex's outbursts, but even as she spoke, she could feel the hurt rising inside her. She wasn't angry with Alex, not entirely, but she was hurt that after all. These years, after everything they had been through together, it had come to this. Her husband was jealous of a simple bouquet of flowers. It wasn't the flowers that mattered, it was everything they represented. They represented the attention, the care, the affection she had been missing for so long. "Do you really think I'm the kind of woman who would just let someone send me flowers? Like that?" she continued, her voice now tinged with a quiet sadness. "Alex, I haven't had your attention in so long. You've been so focused on your empire, on your work, that you've forgotten about me. I've tried to fill that gap with other things, but nothing works. Nothing fills the hole that your absence has left." Her words stung Alex more than he could have imagined. He had always known that he was busy and that he spent long hours at the office, but hearing the words come from Sophia's mouth made it real. She wasn't just quietly suffering in the background. She was breaking, and he hadn't even noticed. You think that, because I've been busy, I've stopped caring? Alex's voice cracked slightly, a sign of the emotion he had been trying to keep buried. I didn't forget about you, Sophia, but I've been building something for us. I've been doing it for you, for us, for our future. Sophia shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. But that's just it, Alex. You've been building a future for us, but you've forgotten about the present. You've forgotten about me, the person who has stood by you through everything. And now, when someone else notices me, when someone else makes me feel seen, you get angry. You get jealous. But where were you when I needed you? Alex stood there, frozen, unable to find the words. He wanted to explain, to tell her that he loved her, that he hadn't meant to neglect her. But the truth was, he hadn't been there for her in the way she needed. He had taken her for granted, assuming that she would always be there, no matter what. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Sophia didn't look at him, her gaze focused on the floor. She had said everything she needed to say. It was no longer about the flowers or about Luke. It was about everything that had led up to this moment. The years of neglect, the missed opportunities to connect, the slow but steady erosion of their marriage. Finally, Alex spoke again, his voice softer now. I'm sorry, Sophia. I've been so caught up in everything else that I didn't see what was happening to us. I didn't realize how much you were hurting. But I swear to you, I never meant to hurt you. I was just trying to make sure we had everything we could ever want. Sophia looked up at him then. Her eyes filled with both sadness and resignation. But it's not just about the things we can buy, Alex. It's about the love we give each other and the time we spend together. I've been patient for so long, but I don't know how much longer I can wait. Alex felt the weight of her words sink in. This wasn't just about a fight over flowers. This was about the heart of their relationship, about the love they had once shared and had slowly lost. He had taken her for granted, assuming that as long as he was successful, everything else would fall into place. But now, with the flowers, as a symbol of everything he had neglected, he realized just how wrong he had been. The power dynamics in their marriage had shifted. Sophia was no longer the passive partner waiting for her husband's attention. She had grown stronger over the years, finding her own way, her own purpose. And now she was standing up for herself, refusing to accept the indifference that Alex had shown her for so long. The flowers had changed everything. The simple gesture had opened Alex's eyes to the fact that he was losing her. But could he fix it? Could he undo the damage that had been done over the years? Sophia wasn't the same woman who would quietly accept his absence. She wasn't the same woman who would simply wait for him to notice her. She had learned that she deserved more than that. And now Alex had to face the painful reality that he had to fight for her love once again. But the question remained. Was it too late? After the confrontation with Sophia, Alex couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in their bed, his mind racing. The anger, the jealousy, and the confusion still burned in his chest. But something else was starting to creep in, something he hadn't felt in years: guilt. The bouquet of flowers, something so simple, had sparked something within him that he had long ignored, his own failures. Could a bouquet really be the key to understanding what he had lost? Could something as small as that trigger a change in him, in the way he saw his marriage and his life? He stared out the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, his mind drifting back to the early days of their relationship. Back then, Sophia had been his partner in everything. They shared dreams, laughed together, and supported each other through challenges. He remembered the love they had, so strong and effortless. But somewhere along the way, his focus shifted. He became consumed by his work and his empire, and in doing so, he slowly lost touch with the person who had once been the most important part of his life. He thought about how many times Sophia had tried to get his attention. How many dinners? Had she prepared just to sit across from him while he typed away on his laptop? How many weekends did she spend alone while he attended yet another meeting or business event? He had always justified it by telling himself he was doing it for them, for their future. But now it was clear. He had been building that future alone. Alex felt a wave of regret wash over him. He had been so focused on achieving success and growing his business that he hadn't realized the damage it was causing to his marriage. He had taken Sophia for granted. He had neglected her needs, her feelings, and her desires. He had made her feel invisible, like an afterthought in the life they had built together. As he sat there, the weight of the guilt began to sink in. He had always prided himself on being a hard worker, a man who could handle anything that came his way. But this was different. His marriage was crumbling, and no amount of business success could fix that. He had neglected the one relationship that mattered most, and now it seemed like it might be too late to repair the damage. But Alex wasn't ready to give up. He had spent years fighting for his business, for his career. But now he had to fight for something even more important: his marriage. It wasn't going to be easy. He couldn't just snap his fingers and make everything right again. He had to prove to Sophia that he was willing to change, that he was willing to put her first, just as he had once promised. The first step was acknowledging the problem. Alex knew that he had spent too many years avoiding the issues in his marriage. He had been so consumed by his work that he had neglected the emotional connection with Sophia. He had ignored the subtle signs that she was struggling, the moments when she tried to get closer to him. He had chosen work over love, and now he had to face the consequences. But regret wasn't going to fix anything. He couldn't just sit around, feeling sorry for himself. Alex needed to take action. He needed to show Sophia that he understood what he had done and that he was willing to make changes. For years he had taken her for granted, but now he saw her through a different lens. She was no longer just his wife. She was the person who had been there through everything, the person who had loved him unconditionally even when he wasn't deserving of it. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. Alex knew that he couldn't expect Sophia to forgive him overnight. She had been hurt for too long, and the trust that had been broken couldn't be rebuilt in a day. But Alex was ready to do whatever it took. He would prove to her that he was serious about making things right. He started small. It wasn't just about grand gestures or buying expensive gifts. It was about showing up. He began making time for her again, truly listening to her, asking about her day, her thoughts, her feelings. He started leaving work early, just so they could have dinner together without distractions. He made an effort to plan their weekends, focusing on spending quality time with her, instead of retreating into the world of business. But perhaps the hardest part for Alex was confronting his own flaws. He realized that his obsession with success had come at the cost of his happiness. He had been so focused on the idea of providing for his family that he had forgotten to nurture the love that had once been the foundation of their relationship. He had been selfish, thinking that providing material security was enough. But now, he understood that love, attention, and emotional connection were just as important, if not more so. There were moments of doubt. Alex wondered if he could truly change, if Sophia could forgive him for all the years he had neglected her. But he couldn't let fear hold him back. He had to fight for her, just like he had fought for his business. The difference was that his marriage couldn't be rebuilt with money or success. It had to be rebuilt with time, patience, and love. In the days that followed, Alex found himself more focused on his marriage than ever before. Every decision he made was now guided by the desire to fix what he had broken. He knew that the road to redemption would be long, but he was ready to walk it. For the first time in years, he felt like he was truly living, not just surviving. He had to make it right, for Sophia and for himself. He had to prove that he wasn't the same man who had ignored her for so long. He had to show her that he still loved her, that he wanted her by his side, not just as his wife, but as his partner. The bouquet of flowers had been the turning point, the wake-up call he had needed to realize what he had been taking for granted. Now he had to work every day to show her that he was worthy of her love once again. The journey ahead would be difficult, but Alex had made a decision. He was no longer just fighting for his business. He was fighting for the most important thing he had ever had, his marriage. Does she want Alex back? Sophia sat quietly in her room, staring out the window, her thoughts running wild. The days following Alex's sudden transformation had been confusing. He was now attentive, kind, and trying hard to fix everything he had ignored for years. But instead of feeling comforted, Sophia felt conflicted. A part of her wanted to believe that people could change, that love could be rebuilt if given a second chance. But another part of her, the part that had learned how to survive the cold silence of their marriage, wasn't sure she could trust him again. Could she truly believe that his change was real and lasting? Or was it just fear of losing her that had pushed him to change? Alex had shown effort, no doubt about it. He came home early, listened to her, and even laughed at her jokes again. But all these sweet gestures now felt unfamiliar. Years of being invisible had changed something deep inside Sophia. She had learned how to stand on her own. She had built a world without him in it, at least not in the way a husband should be. Now that he was finally acting like the man she had once fallen in love with, she didn't know what to feel. Was she supposed to just forgive and forget everything he had put her through? And then, there was Luke. Luke had entered her life when she was at her lowest. He didn't demand anything from her. He didn't make big promises or offer grand speeches. He simply noticed her, really noticed her. When she talked, he listened. When she smiled, he smiled back. He didn't try to fix her. He just stood beside her, offering quiet support when she needed it the most. Luke made her feel alive again, like a woman who mattered. Their connection had grown slowly, naturally, without pressure. And that's what made it so powerful. It was calm. It was real. It was something she hadn't felt in years. Sophia often found herself thinking about the time they spent together. A walk in the park, a long conversation over coffee, a gentle laugh, shared over a shared memory. These moments were small, but they filled the empty spaces Alex had left behind. They gave her comfort and peace. But with Alex trying to come back into her life, she now found herself stuck between two different worlds, one filled with history and pain, and the other full of possibility and warmth. The more she thought about it, the more torn she felt. She had shared a life with Alex. They had memories, a home, and a marriage built over the years. It wasn't something she could walk away from easily, but she also couldn't forget how lonely she had felt for so long. The hurt wasn't just a temporary wound, it had left a mark on her. And even though Alex was trying now, she couldn't ignore the past. Could she truly open her heart to him again without fear of being hurt all over? With Luke, there was no history, no broken promises. But that also meant there was uncertainty. Could their friendship turn into something deeper? Was he ready for the kind of commitment she needed? And was she even ready to start over with someone new? The thought of choosing either man scared her, but the idea of doing nothing scared her even more. Sophia began writing in her journal again, something she hadn't done in years. It helped her sort through her feelings. One entry read, "Alex says, he loves me now. But why did it take him almost losing me to remember?" Another said, "Luke makes me feel safe. But do I love him? Or just the way he makes me feel?" These were questions she couldn't answer easily, but they kept swirling in her, mind day and night. The more she reflected, the clearer it became that this wasn't just about the two men. It was about her. For years, she had lived in a marriage that didn't feed her soul. She had lost parts of herself trying to keep that relationship alive. Now, both men were looking at her with hope, but she needed to look at herself. What did she want? What kind of life did she want to live? Who did she want to be? One evening, as the sky turned pink with the setting sun, Sophia sat with a cup of tea, thinking about everything. She thought about the lonely nights, the dinners, eaten alone, and the sound of Alex's typing filling the room while she sat in silence. Then she thought about the soft conversations with Luke, the feeling of being seen, the laughter that came so easily. Her heart was heavy, and her mind was tired. She didn't want to rush into a decision. It wasn't just about love. It was about healing, trust, and choosing a path that honored her growth. She didn't want to go back to who she was before, the woman who accepted less than she deserved. But she also didn't want to shut the door on a marriage that could possibly be rebuilt if both hearts were willing. Sophia decided she needed space. She spoke to Alex calmly, explaining that while she appreciated his efforts, she wasn't ready to make any promises. He looked heartbroken, but he didn't argue. Maybe he finally understood that she wasn't just someone waiting to be rescued. She was someone rediscovering her voice. She also spoke to Luke, gently telling him she needed time to figure things out. He respected her honesty and offered support without pressure. Days turned into weeks, and Sophia focused on herself. She picked up painting again, spent time with close friends, and allowed herself to just feel, without judgment, without rushing. Through that process, she started to understand something important. Her happiness didn't depend on a man. It depended on how true she was to herself. Eventually, the time to make a choice would come, and when it did, she wanted to be sure. She didn't want to choose out of guilt, fear, or comfort. She wanted to choose from a place of strength. Sophia's heart was torn, and Alex's fate hung in the balance. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. She had found her power again. Now she just had to trust it. Alex had spent years buried in his work, blind to the woman who stood beside him through it all. Now, as he sat alone in their quiet living room, the emptiness was louder than ever. He had finally seen the truth. Sophia wasn't just drifting away. She had already started building a life without him in it. That realization shook him to the core. It wasn't just the bouquet from Luke or the look in her eyes when she smiled at someone else. It was the way she no longer waited for him, no longer looked to him for comfort. He had lost her, and now he needed to find a way to bring her back. Alex didn't believe in grand speeches or sudden miracles, but he knew one thing. He had to start trying, really trying. So, he began with simple things. A heartfelt note was left on her bedside table. Her favorite coffee was waiting on the kitchen counter when she woke up. A playlist of songs they used to listen to during happier times. Each gesture was small, but they came from a place of sincerity. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was trying to show her he still knew her, still cared. These weren't grand acts of romance. They were quiet apologies, written in everyday kindness. He also started speaking openly, something he had never done before. One evening, he sat down with her and said, "I was wrong. I didn't see you. I thought providing for us was enough. But I forgot how to love you properly." His voice cracked with honesty. Sophia listened quietly, her expression unreadable. She wasn't ready to forgive, not yet, but she appreciated the words. They weren't polished or dramatic. They were real. Sophia's reaction wasn't immediate. She didn't rush into his arms or declare that she still loved him. Instead, she nodded, said thank you, and left the room. It wasn't the response Alex had hoped for, but it wasn't a rejection either. It was a beginning. She needed time, and he had to give her that. For once, he wasn't pushing her to meet him halfway. He was willing to walk the full distance if it meant a chance to win her heart again. Days passed, and Alex continued his quiet efforts. He cooked dinner for her, even though he wasn't good at it. He learned how to use the washing machine just so she wouldn't have to do it alone. He asked her about her day and truly listened. When she shared something, he didn't look at his phone or talk about work. He looked at her. He saw her. He heard every word. At times, Sophia softened. She smiled at something he said or joined him for a walk. But there were also moments when she pulled away, unsure if she could let herself believe in him again. Her heart had been through too much to jump back in. Trust wasn't built overnight. She needed to see consistency. Words were easy, but she needed action. She needed to know this wasn't just a reaction to Luke, or fear, or guilt. She needed to know it was real. Alex knew that, so he kept showing up. He didn't expect gratitude or forgiveness right away. He just wanted her to see that he wasn't giving up. And slowly, cracks began to appear in the walls Sophia had built around her heart. One evening, she asked him to join her for a movie. Another day, she sent him a text just to check in. They weren't dramatic signs, but to Alex, they were everything. More importantly, they began to talk, really talk. Not just about their daily routines, but about their feelings. They discussed the silent distance that had grown between them, the years of unmet expectations, and lonely nights. Alex confessed how lost he had been in his ambition, believing success would make them both happy. Sophia admitted how often she had cried herself to sleep, feeling invisible in her own home. It wasn't easy. These conversations brought up pain, but they also brought healing. For the first time in years, they sat side by side and saw each other as equals again, not just husband and wife, but two people trying to understand each other. They talked about what they wanted now, how they could rebuild trust, and what it would take to start over. There were no promises, no pressure, just honesty. Sophia still thought about Luke, not because she didn't care for Alex, but because Luke had reminded her of the kind of love she deserved. That calm, steady presence had been her lifeline. But as Alex continued to show effort, she began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she could find that feeling with him again. If Alex could continue to grow, not just change for a moment, but evolve into a better version of himself, then maybe there was a future for them. One afternoon, Alex surprised her with a small garden he had started planting in their backyard. She had always loved flowers, but he had never paid attention to her hobbies before. As she walked outside and saw the blooming colors, she felt a lump in her throat. "I remember you once said you wanted a place to sit and read in the sun," he said softly. "I didn't forget." It was such a small thing, and yet it meant so much. Not because of the flowers, but because of the effort behind them. Alex was no longer trying to win her over with apologies or gifts. He was trying to understand her, and that made all the difference. Sophia still wasn't sure what the future held. There were no guarantees. But for the first time in a long time, she felt something shift. The man she had once loved was slowly finding his way back, not just into her life, but into her heart. It wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding love from the ground up never is. But she was willing to keep watching, to keep feeling, to keep hoping. As Alex fought to win her back, the real question was, could he prove his commitment? Not just today or tomorrow, but every single day that followed. Because love, Sophia now understood, wasn't about flowers or fancy dinners. It was about showing up. It was about listening. It was about growing together. And maybe, just maybe, Alex was ready to do all that and more. Sophia sat alone in the garden one quiet morning, staring at the blooming flowers Alex had planted. The air was calm, but her heart was full of questions. After everything that had happened, after all the tears and all the moments of silence, She was finally at the point where she had to make a choice. Luke had brought her peace and support when she needed it the most. Alex had brought years of pain, but he was now showing her a version of himself she had never seen before. Someone who cared deeply, someone who was finally present. But could she trust that it would last? Would the man who once neglected her be the one she chose to spend the rest of her life with? Alex, on the other hand, knew the weight of what Sophia was facing. He had spent the last few weeks doing everything he could to prove that he had changed. No longer was he hiding behind his work or brushing off her feelings. He was showing up every day, listening, learning, and giving her space when she needed it. He had made a promise to himself to never again put anything above his family. Not business, not pride, nothing. But promises alone were not enough. It was Sophia who had to believe in them. It was Sophia who had to feel it. One evening they sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same table where silence used to sit between them. This time, there was a real conversation. Alex looked at her and said, "I know I failed you. I won't ask you to forget that, but I'm asking for a chance to be the man you deserve." His voice wasn't shaking, but his eyes told the story of someone who had finally understood what love really meant. It wasn't about flowers or dinners. It was about respect, presence, and care. Sophia was quiet for a while. Her heart had been through so much. She had felt invisible in her own marriage for years. And then Luke had shown her kindness, attention, and peace. He didn't come with a past full of pain. He came with comfort. Yet as she looked at Alex now, she saw someone who wasn't just apologizing. He was changing step by step. He was becoming someone new, someone real. But would that be enough? The decision wasn't easy. Sophia thought about the history she shared with Alex, the memories both good and bad. She thought about the times he had failed her, but also about how he was trying to make up for them now. She thought about Luke's steadiness, the way he had never made her feel alone. In the end, her heart spoke louder than her fears. She wanted a chance, not just to fix what was broken, but to build something stronger. Sophia looked at Alex and said, "I'm not promising everything will go back to how it was. I need time, but I'm willing to try, one step at a time." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a big movie moment. It was honest, and that's what made it beautiful. Alex nodded, not with relief, but with understanding. He knew this wasn't the end of the journey. It was just the beginning of a new one. One where he would have to prove every single day that he meant what he said. They both knew it wouldn't be easy. Love after pain requires patience, forgiveness, and constant effort. But they also knew that giving up without trying wasn't something either of them wanted. They chose to walk together again, not because everything was perfect, but because they believed in the possibility of something better. In the end, love required more than just words. It required actions. And Alex was ready to keep showing up, not just for Sophia, but for the future they were now building together. Alex and Sophia's story wasn't a fairy tale. It was a real human journey filled with mistakes, heartbreak, and hard lessons. It all started with a simple moment of jealousy when Alex saw someone else giving Sophia what he had ignored for years. That one moment became the wake-up call he didn't know he needed. It forced him to look at himself, to realize what he had been blind to all along. It wasn't about someone taking his place. It was about how he had already stepped away from it. For Sophia, the journey was about learning her own worth. She had spent too long hoping Alex would notice her pain, but when he didn't, she found strength in herself. And when Luke showed up, kind and present, she remembered what it felt like to be seen. That gave her the courage to ask for more, to not settle for less than she deserved. Their journey wasn't about one big moment. It was about many small ones. A note left on the table. A quiet apology, a walk in the garden, a tough conversation late at night. These little steps helped them slowly rebuild what had been lost. Not perfectly, not quickly, but truthfully. In the end, their story is a reminder that love isn't something you get once and then keep forever. Love is something you earn, protect, and grow every day. It's about listening when it's hard, showing up when it's uncomfortable, and never letting the people you care about feel invisible. Alex and Sophia found their way back, not by forgetting the past, but by learning from it. And that's a lesson worth holding on to. What do you think? Was Alex's jealousy a sign of true love, or was it just a reaction to losing control? Did he really love Sophia all along? Or was he only fighting when he realized someone else might take his place? If you were in Sophia's shoes, would you give Alex another chance? Or would you move on with someone new like Luke? We want to hear your honest thoughts. Also, comment below and tell us where you're watching from. It's amazing to see people from so many different places connecting through this story. And don't forget, your comment might be the one we pin. We're looking for thoughtful, heartfelt replies. Let's talk about love, growth, and second chances. What would you do if this was your story?